I appreciate the conversation as well, and certainly the contributions of each person, and applaud the need for us to honor the religious freedoms of all people. I think as one of the things we did as a city early on with the current commission we have in place, and this was really post kind of the Confederate Monument era, and when we were going through some of that dialogue, is that we sought to make it our mantra to work to honor everyone. And honoring everyone means you have to observe people's differences in creeds, and it means you embrace the entire community and the freedoms we have constitutionally to do that. The swings of party changes can create problems on opposite ends, just as there can be some being incurred currently. And so I think the point for all of us in this is that we always work towards the middle. I am actually kind of encouraged about the era in which we find our nation in today and our world, including the social justice issues and including even COVID, because it kind of centers us automatically to talk about what's really important. And I think we're experiencing a reawakening during a time when many of us have kind of gotten lulled into the status quo in which we are involved, and the feeling for the need for sometimes for the pace of change had slowed down dramatically. I align it a little bit to when I first married my precious wife of 43 years and mother of our 12 children, who, you know, if you'd ever told me I was going to have 12 children, I would have told you you're crazy, but we did, and just had our 25th grandchild. But when we got married, there were things she knew she needed to change about, or wanted to change about me, that she didn't necessarily always tell me up front when we first got married. And those needs were from her perspective. They're not necessarily weren't mine. And so you kind of go through stages, and I think this aligns a lot to who we are as people as well. First, she had a hope that this is something she can get me to be eager to see that needs to be changed. Secondly, she realized discouragement as I was not taking her needs as seriously as I should. And thirdly, she kind of settled into assuming that this is just going to be the way it's going to be, because I don't care enough about what she wants to have being done. And that harbors anger, and that harbors hurt within her as we go along. And then she kind of stays in that defeated mode until something trips. And then suddenly I realize, wait a minute, I am not observing some of the things that matter to her. And for fear of loss, I become serious, much more serious about the need to invest in her desires. Stephen Covey said, make what is important to the other person as important as that person is to you. That is my daily job with my wife. That is my daily job with our citizens. That is my responsibility as we go forward, to take the issues that are important to them and try and make certain that they remain important and considered for us. So what makes the difference? It takes awareness and intentionality, and those require empathy to feel injustice or disregard, and to respect religious values of others within our constitutional laws. And there is this balance in which we live, in which we must keep all those things in the middle. And so I'm excited about, as I said, about where we find ourselves, because we have the opportunity, which I think is unprecedented for at least the past 20 or 30 years, to move into equity responsibilities that lie before us. Human rights and equalizing opportunities while providing justice reform are new imperatives. And that reality is the good that has come from tragedy. This opportunity, this responsibility, we must assume together. Religious freedoms are at the center of that as well. So I make no excuses for the past, other than to state that we are now far more aware of the gaps that have been tolerated and the pain and the hurt that those gaps have tangibly created, such as the creed issues we have just discussed. So resolve, empathy, and sincere dialogue combined with specifically defined structural change and implementation are where we are now. And the desired compassion exists certainly within our community. And I'm excited about that. We're going to have a day of unity, September 19th here, where we're coming together to really talk about issues that are important to everyone and have representatives from all faiths involved in that. So what is my encouragement to move on what matters, be as drastic as necessary to effect change, but that does not mean to do so with violence and disorder. Those elements don't serve to foster growth, but rather they make others resistant to change. And so one of the things we have to think about as we go through this is making sure we're tempering using patience and balance as our agents of change. But just as in marriage, it is patience and balance working on what matters most and making new and intentional, long-lasting, incremental changes that move us forward together well. Do we need to act? You bet. But find the community leaders who know how to identify the most significant gaps to first address, and then work together to make those things happen. Then move on to number 2, then on to number 3, and many of these things we can be also doing concurrently, of course. But my encouragement is that we harness the powerful tools of patience and balance as we do so. So just as when we diet, binge changes don't matter a lot because they don't hold. The habit changes, systemic repairs, and some of which take repetition and a little time in the 7 years you were talking about earlier, are what bring lasting harmony to our cities, our families, and into our personal lives. Our job is to pursue change that protects human rights wisely, and human rights are always worth the fight.